Harry looked anxiously behind him again. Snape remained close by, still buried in his exam questions, but this was Snape's memory, and Harry was sure that if Snape chose to wander off in a different direction once outside in the grounds, he, Harry, would not be able to follow James any further. To his intense relief, however, when James and his friends strode off down the lawn towards the lake, Snape followed, still poring over the exam paper, and apparently with no fixed idea of where he was going. By keeping a little ahead of him, Harry managed to maintain a close watch on James and the others. "Well, I thought that paper was a piece of cake," he heard Sirius say. "I'll be surprised if I don't get outstanding on it at least." "Me too," said James. He put his hand in his pocket and took out a struggling golden snitch. "Where'd you get that?" "Nicked it," said James casually. He started playing with the snitch, allowing it to fly as much as a foot away before seizing it again. His reflexes were excellent. Wormtail watched him in awe. They stopped in the shade of the very same beech tree on the edge of the lake, where Harry, Ron, and Hermione had once spent a Sunday finishing their homework, and threw themselves down on the grass. Harry looked over his shoulder yet again and saw, to his delight, that Snape had settled himself on the grass in the dense shadow of a clump of bushes. He was as deeply immersed in the owl paper as ever, which left Harry free to sit down on the grass between the beech and the bushes and watch the foursome under the tree. The sunlight was dazzling on the smooth surface of the lake, on the bank of which the group of laughing girls who had just left the Great Hall were sitting, with their shoes and socks off, cooling their feet in the water. Lupin had pulled out a book and was reading. Sirius stared around at the students milling over the grass, looking rather haughty and bored, but very handsomely so. James was still playing with the snitch, letting it zoom further and further away, almost escaping, but always grabbing at the last second. Wormtail was watching him with his mouth open. Every time James made a particularly difficult catch, Wormtail gasped and applauded. After 5 minutes of this, Harry wondered why James didn't tell Wormtail to get a grip on himself, but James seemed to be enjoying the attention. Harry noticed that his father had a habit of rumpling up his hair as though to keep it from getting too tidy, and he also kept looking over at the girls by the water's edge. "Put that away, will you?" said Sirius finally, as James made a fine catch and Wormtail let out a cheer, before Wormtail wets himself with excitement. Wormtail turned slightly pink, but James grinned. "If it bothers you," he said, stuffing the snitch back in his pocket. Harry had the distinct impression that Sirius was the only one for whom James would have stopped showing off. "I'm bored," said Sirius. "Wish it was full moon." "You might," said Lupin darkly from behind his book. "We've still got Transfiguration. If you're bored, you could test me. Here," and he held out his book. But Sirius snorted. "I don't need to look at that rubbish. I know it all." "This'll liven you up, Padfoot," said James quietly. "Look who it is." Sirius's head turned. He became very still. "That has scented a rabbit." "Excellent," he said softly. "Snivelous." Harry turned to see what Sirius was looking at. Snape was on his feet again, and was stowing the owl paper in his bag. As he left the shadows of the bushes and set off across the grass, Sirius and James stood up. Lupin and Wormtail remained sitting. Lupin was still staring down at his book, though his eyes were not moving, and a faint frown line had appeared between his eyebrows. Wormtail was looking from Sirius and James to Snape, with a look of avid anticipation on his face. "All right, Snivelus," said James loudly. Snape reacted so fast it was as though he had been expecting an attack. Dropping his bag, he plunged his hand inside his robes, and his wand was halfway into the air when James shouted, "Expelliarmus!" Snape's wand flew 12 feet in the air and fell with a little thud in the grass behind him. Sirius let out a bark of laughter. "Impedimenta," he said, pointing his wand at Snape, who was knocked off his feet halfway through a dive towards his own fallen wand. Students all around had turned to watch. Some of them had got to their feet and were edging nearer. Some looked apprehensive, others entertained. Snape lay panting on the ground. James and Sirius advanced on him, wands raised. James glanced over his shoulder at the girls at the water's edge as he went. Wormtail was on his feet now, watching hungrily, edging around Lupin to get a clearer view. "How'd the exam go, Snively?" said James. "I was watching him. His nose was touching the parchment," said Sirius viciously. "There'll be grease marks all over it. They won't be able to read a word." Several people watching laughed. Snape was clearly unpopular. Wormtail sniggered shrilly. Snape was trying to get up, but the jinx was still operating on him. He was struggling, as though bound by invisible ropes. "You! Wait, he panted, staring up at James with an expression of purest loathing. You, wait. Wait for what? Said Sirius coolly. What are you going to do, Snively? Wipe your nose on us? Snape let out a stream of mixed swear words and hexes, but with his wand 10 feet away, nothing happened. Wash out your mouth, said James coldly. Scorgify. Pink soap bubbles streamed from Snape's mouth. The froth was covering his lips, making him gag, choking him. Leave him alone! James and Sirius looked around. James's free hand immediately jumped to his hair. It was one of the girls from the lake edge. She had thick, dark red hair that fell to her shoulders, and startlingly green, almond-shaped eyes. Harry's eyes. Harry's mother. All right, Evans, said James, and the tone of his voice was suddenly pleasant, deeper, more mature. Leave him alone, Lily repeated. She was looking at James with every sign of great dislike. What's he done to you? Well, said James, appearing to deliberate the point, it's more the fact that he exists, if you know what I mean. Many of the surrounding students laughed, Sirius and Wormtail included, but Lupin, still apparently intent on his book, didn't, and nor did Lily. You think you're funny, she said coldly, but you're just an arrogant, bullying toe-rag, Potter. Leave him alone. I will if you go out with me, Evans, said James quickly. Go on, go out with me, and I'll never lay a wand on old Snively again. Behind him, the impediment Jinx was wearing off. Snape was beginning to inch towards his fallen wand, spitting out soap suds as he crawled. I wouldn't go out with you if it was a choice between you and a giant squid, said Lily. Bad luck, Prongs, said Sirius briskly, and turned back to Snape. Oi! But too late. Snape had directed his wand straight at James. There was a flash of light, and a gash appeared on the side of James's face, spattering his rose with blood. James whirled about. A second flash of light later, Snape was hanging upside down in the air, his robes falling over his head to reveal skinny, pallid legs and a pair of graying underpants. Many people in the small crowd cheered. Sirius and James and Wormtail roared with laughter. Lily, whose furious expression had twitched for an instant as though she was going to smile, said, Let him down. Certainly, said James, and he jerked his wand upwards. Snape fell into a crumpled heap on the ground. Disentangling himself from his robes, he got quickly to his feet, wand up, but Sirius said, Petrificus totalis, and Snape keeled over again, rigid as a board. Leave him alone, Lily shouted. She had her own wand out now. James and Sirius eyed it warily. Ah, Evans. Don't make me hex you, said James earnestly. Take the curse off him then. James sighed deeply, then turned to Snape and muttered the counter-curse. There you go, he said as Snape struggled to his feet. You're lucky Evans was here, Snivellus. I don't need help from filthy little mudbloods like her. Lily blinked. Fine, she said coolly. I won't bother in future, and I'd wash your pants if I were you, Snivellus. Apologize to Evans, James roared at Snape, his wand pointed threateningly at him. I don't want you to make him apologize, Lily shouted, rounding on James. You're as bad as he is. What? Yelped James. I'd never call you a you-know-what. Messing up your hair because you think it looks cool to look like you've just got off your broomstick, showing off with that stupid snitch, walking down corridors and hexing anyone who annoys you just because you can. I'm surprised your broomstick can get off the floor with that fat head of yours. You make me sick. She turned on her heel and hurried away. Evans, James shouted after her. Hey, Evans! But she didn't look back. What is it with her? Said James, trying and failing to look as though this was a throwaway question of no real importance to him. Reading between the lines, I'd say she thinks you're a bit conceited, mate, said Sirius. Right, said James, who looked furious now. Right. There was another flash of light, and Snape was once again hanging upside down in the air. Who wants to see me take off Snively's pants? But whether James really did take off Snape's pants, Harry never found out. A hand had closed right over his upper arm, closed with a pincer-like grip. Wincing, Harry looked around to see who had a hold of him, and saw, with a thrill of horror, a fully grown, adult-sized Snape standing right beside him, white with rage. Having fun? Harry felt himself rising into the air. The summer's day evaporated around him. He was floating upwards through icy blackness, Snape's hand still tight upon his upper arm. Then, with a swooping feeling as though he had turned head over heels in midair, his feet hit the stone floor of Snape's dungeon, and he was standing again beside the pensieve on Snape's desk in the shadowy, present-day potion master's study. "So," said Snape, gripping Harry's arm so tightly Harry's hand was starting to feel numb. "So, been enjoying yourself, Potter?" "No," said Harry, trying to free his arm. It was Snape's lips were shaking, his face was white, his teeth were bared. "Amusing man, your father, wasn't he?" said Snape, shaking Harry so hard his glasses slipped down his nose. I didn't..." Snape threw Harry from him with all his might. Harry fell hard onto the dungeon floor. "You will not repeat what you saw to anybody," Snape bellowed. "No," said Harry, getting to his feet as far from Snape as he could. No, of course I will." "Get out! Get out! I don't want to see you in this office ever again!" And as Harry hurtled towards the door, a jar of dead cockroaches exploded over his head. He wrenched the door open and flew along the corridor, stopping only when he had put 3 floors between himself and Snape. There, he leaned against the wall, panting and rubbing his bruised arm. He had no desire at all to return to Gryffindor so early, nor to tell Ron and Hermione what he had just seen. What was making Harry feel so horrified and unhappy was not being shouted at or having jars thrown at him. It was that he knew how it felt to be humiliated in the middle of a circle of onlookers, knew exactly how Snape had felt as his father had taunted him, and that, judging from what he had just seen, his father had been every bit as arrogant as Snape had always told him. Alrighty, so here they all are. What I'm going to do is just really quickly go through them and through the features of every single one of them. The Gryffindor journal is one where I mainly did stenciling, and I also did the hot glue corners, as well as the mixing of the colors so that I got everything right. I really love this one. I love this detail on the spine. I think it's really amazing. And on the inside, it's just got a whole lot of mishmash of colors mashed all here, and then the gold around the outside. I think that gold is pretty amazing. Although there is no black as such, you can still see black coming off the sides here, so it looks like it's tarnished. I really love that. So that is the Gryffindor Wizard Journal. The next one is this one, the Hufflepuff Journal. Now, I love this one, but this one did give me the hardest. And the hardest thing was this. I had cut these too small, and I'd extended them with hot glue, but that didn't stick down in the end. So I ended up putting blobs of glossy accents. You can kind of see here where the hot glue is coming off, so I will put glossy accent down there. I was toying with the idea of keeping the glossy accents clear, but I just thought I'd go ahead and put a dab of the Venetian gold, and I love how that looks. I also love how I put the dot of Venetian gold here. It kind of looks like it's like a bead, a gold bead or something like that. And I love the texture of the string here, and that string all around here in the middle. So I love the color combination, I love the detail here, and I love this texture. Really beautiful. The Ravenclaw is the next one. This one's gorgeous, and I've not quite finished yet. I think I'm either going to put the fox or the deer. I haven't made up my mind yet. I don't think the crackle worked too well, but I do see a little bit of crackle here, so maybe it did, and maybe my crackle's just old, or maybe I need to add a second layer of crackle. So I still need to experiment with that. I love how the die cuts here add a whole lot of dimension, and I just love this. I think this is beautiful. Putting 2 bits of cardboard die cuts together really elevates that, and bringing in the blue into the feathers also brings it back to that blue color of Ravenclaw. Once again, the Venetian gold along the outside just gives it a beautiful gilded look, and on the inside I did go around the individual covers, and sometimes I did this and sometimes I did the 2, and I don't mind. I like the difference. So there is a little bit of difference. You can see the crackle effect here as opposed to no crackle. So it sort of did work. I just thought that it was going to be way different, but I don't mind. I love it. And last of all is the Slytherin. I did end up putting this label piece on in the end off camera, but I love this. I love the texture of the tissue paper. This is amazing here. I love how it feels. I love how it feels on the spine. I love these die cut insets from the Mixed Media Tim Holtz. They just added such character to the book, and it looks really dark. And I love the silver on black on green combination. That's gorgeous. That gold around the outside, I am so glad that I did that. I think that that gives it such a like a wizard's regal look. And the inside, once again, that green on black on gray combination, it's something I would never ever put together, but now that I've done it, I think it's absolutely amazing, and I'll definitely be using that combination in my art journals from now on. I love that gold around the outside too. So that's my first stage of getting the journal covers done, and I hope you come back and join me for making the inserts or the notebooks for these wizard journals.